It's not. All right. In that regard, I'd like to call the meeting to order. And again, for those who are here for the first time, this is the second in a series of meetings that the Finance Committee has set up for budgetary reviews. We have additional meetings that have been posted for March the 1st and March the 3rd at 5:30, as well as our regularly scheduled meeting, which is on Monday, March the 8th. It's not known whether or not we're going to have to schedule any additional meetings, but we'll see. We'll take that as it happens. So moving right along, the first item on the agenda is the Council on Aging. And before we move any further on that, I would like to disclose that for those who don't know, I am one of the drivers of the van for the Council on Aging. And in that regard, I'm going to recuse myself from any involvement in this session, simply to avoid the appearance of a conflict of interest. So I will basically turn over the gavel. I'll leave the meeting. Mary, if you could give me a text when you've concluded, just to let me know, and I'll come back on. All right?
Will do.
Okay, thank you.
I just have a question. Are we going to be able to share the documents today?
Yes, we'll do that.
Oh, good, good.
And I did send out to the FinCom today a truly level funded Plan 1 or Budget 1, which I guess I was a little unclear before. So I wanted to make sure that after Monday's experience and Mary saying, you're supposed to be level funded. And I said, oops, I better go back and look at mine. So Plan 1 or Budget 1 is definitely a true level funded budget.
And Janet, will you be presenting?
I can start, and Joan will probably certainly turn over a little bit, but certainly Joan can present whatever is best. Joan, do you want to? What document do you want to start with? Do you want to start out at the level funding and then go to the level 2 or budget 2 or what?
So we'll start with budget number 1, and I'm going to share my screen. So just
okay.
A moment, please.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Janet, for presenting.
Well, anytime you want to, Joan can't get me to keep quiet, so that's the only problem. She says, thank God they're only advisory.
See this?
There's nothing there, Mary.
It's coming, though. I think there's a circle.
It's coming, yeah.
Well, maybe not.
Stop share. It says to share. Okay, wait a minute. I'm sorry. Is anything showing up? Nothing?
No, not at this point. Did you selected the document that you wanted?
Right, it's on my screen, and you guys are all on the right-hand side.
That's weird.
And you hit the share screen button?
Yeah.
Yeah, it says that you're viewing Mary's screen, but it's a black screen. I mean, I'm happy to try sharing the spreadsheet. I may be a little bit the rough numbers one if you want.
One more time, one more time.
Try it again.
One more time. Nothing?
No.
Okay. All right, well, if you want to try, I'm sorry, Janet, I'm not
Oh,
able to
that's okay.
tell me it's there. It says my,
Can you stop sharing, Mary, and I'll try if I have any better luck. I think I have just the raw data thing, so let me see if we have any better luck here.
yours.
Is that visible? I mean, I don't know if it's the
Yeah.
same one that you were showing.
Yes,
Mary.
yes, it's the exact same thing.
Okay. Okay, so as a level funded budget one, if you see, basically I copied budget 2021 and pasted it into FY22 budget one. So it's the same exact numbers as last year, with the reflecting the difference in the expense budget from the previous year. So, any questions? Any questions overall, I guess, from this perspective?
I do have a couple of questions. On the number of personnel that are assigned, how many are actually on the rolls right now?
How many? I didn't hear. How many are what?
How many employees are assigned to the Council on Aging? If you could just give us a breakdown of, what their hourly rate is and how many hours per week, that would, help us out greatly.
I'll turn that over to Joan.
So on this, on the town wage side, it's my position, which is 26 hours a week, $20.40 an hour. The second wage line is a partial wage for my administrative assistant, and she makes $15.30 an hour and works 10 hours a week.
But 7 hours on the town budget and 3 hours on the state formula grant budget.
And then I have other staff that are from the FRTA grant and the formula grant. I have a volunteer coordinator and my administrative assistant. Her other wages, as Janet said, are paid out of the formula grant.
And how many hours does the volunteer coordinator work a week on a normal year?
So it's 5.5 hours. I'm sorry, it's 5 hours a week.
5 hours a week, right? Yeah, okay. And then the FRTA drivers, there are 3 of them. We have 1 van, so there's a rotating schedule for 3 drivers, and the hours are paid out of the Franklin Regional Transit Association Authority grant, and those hours fluctuate depending on how many seniors need rides that week. So
to ensure that I understand, or we understand correctly, for payment out of the general fund, right now it's the COA director and 7 hours of the administrative assistant per week. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Regarding the COA expenses line, are there any maintenance contracts or reoccurring service fees that you need to pay? Or basically, what expenses are contained in that line?
So once a year, we usually have an MCOA dues, which they waived this year due to COVID. So that was their contribution. It's several $100s a year, but that's been waived.
and Joan, just for clarification, MCOA is the Massachusetts Council on Aging, so they're kind of the overlying umbrella, in addition to the Executive Office of Elder Affairs. I don't want to use too many acronyms, and I know I get lost fast, so.
Most of the other expenses are either mileage, say we have to, we're doing deliveries or pickups or anything to do with the position where we have mileage involved. And we also office supplies. So it's minimal, and we also have other funding such as the formula grant and most recently COVID account. Postage comes out of our expenses as well.
That's the mailing of your monthly newsletter?
So we do not mail our monthly newsletter. We mail it twice a year. Postage has to do a lot with cards and applications for FRTA. Our volunteer coordinator does birthday cards for everybody over 80 monthly, and it's hundreds. So that's part of the postage.
Have any questions? Rachel?
No, I'm all set. Thank you.
I would just like to add to that $20.40, we'll talk about it in more detail for the grade level that Joan and the experience and the background that she brings to the job and the position requires is unfortunate. I don't know how else to put it, but when you have a budget and you want to try to expand the program because the seniors are now almost probably over 30% of our population, we had to stay within that budget, and we were fortunate to get an experienced director for who knows how many years, but it's not in a salary that would certainly attract anybody in the future. But we'll talk about that on the next budget level too. So.
I think we're good for, if you want to move on to the
Okay.
two.
So I'm going to share right now the other budget. You can see that we're looking for an increase for the COA director, and I'll bring up the background sheet in just a second. To make it a more competitive salary, a fair and competitive salary for someone of the level of the job that we need. Also, the wages, we're asking that the salary, the wages for the COA, for the administrative assistant be fully funded out of the general fund. There's not an admin assistant that's partially funded from a grant, so puts them in a very vulnerable position, and the support is really required for the 2,000 plus seniors that we have in town. But we can go. So those are the couple of the reasons that the salaries have increased, and then to just restore our budget back to the 1650 that it was 2 years ago. Are you okay if I just bring up the background?
Absolutely.
Are you okay with that? I'll bring that up. If I can find it here. Here we go. So in our budget 2, we're looking for about $27 an hour versus $20 an hour. Some of the things that we wanted to note is that this past year, the COA board approved and Highland Valley Elder Services approved for Joan to serve on the executive board at Highland Valley Elder Services. And in addition, Joan was one of 5 out of 351 communities that achieved the COA director certification this past probably 15 months, Joan. It was about a 15-month program. Started out as 12, and then, as we all know, everything changed last March. So we included a comparison of area communities and what hourly rate in hours they're working, and also included a percentage of seniors in town. So as you see, starting with Munson, 27% of their community is seniors, 35 in Hamden. Southampton at these numbers is 29%. I wanted to be consistent with whatever we were using. And then the medium household income, which I always find interesting when you see Southampton's median household income of over $104,000 compared to some of the other communities. that are paying probably a more competitive and fair hourly rate. So, and this is, I included the source where all this information came from to be consistent. So the position back in 2019, when the chair of the Personnel Policies and Procedures Board presented the results of a study, the COA director was in the same, graded at the same range as the health director, the town accountant, the town clerk. I know we have the town clerk, the library director, the treasurer collector, the principal assessor, the building commissioner. And if we see below the rates of that scale, that Joan is bringing up the end of that scale. And we just, again, are looking for budget 2 to make that pay and make that director's position, whoever is in it, be fair and equitable, both in our town and in our neighboring communities. So that was kind of the background. I don't know if Nancy or Lori or Joan want to add anything to that, if I could ask for additional input. So the only other thing that I will mention as well is that we are meeting with the Personnel Policies and Procedures Board to try to update the job description to be more accurate in both the supervisory role and work conditions. I mean, because we have one room, it's a matter of rearranging the room, picking up tables, putting away tables, hauling tables. The work conditions are not what I think was reflected in the job description at the time. So we're looking to do that and then potentially rescore the position to make sure we're in the right grade range.
Janet, have you already reached out to the PQB to set up an appointment with them? Or
yes, we're on the agenda for tomorrow. And again, in addition to the, the hired folks from town that either one of our grants or the town pay for, Joan also has to recruit and pay and, collect monies for various instructors at the senior center. So that kind of all also falls into her lap. Things like, Joan, you're gonna have to fill in the blank now for me. So what are some of the outside people that we have, that we pay to deliver a service?
So our instructors, such as our chair yoga, our Tai Chi instructor, our line dance teacher, and I do all the payroll. I do the FRTA, the turnovers for the van.
And you schedule most of the appointments for the van as well. So she wears a lot of hats. So
I just counted up my calls for this month. It was over 120 calls. But of course, the vaccine has jumped at about 50 calls. So
I was going to add that outreach has been huge this year. You've done a great job with it. And we don't have an outreach coordinator. You are it.
Right.
Well, I get Darlene and Flo are doing their fair share on their few hours that they have.
And yes, and I think one of the things we'd like to do is by funding the administrative assistant fully by the town, that frees up the state formula grant to do things like maybe bring in a part-time outreach person in addition, because when the center is open, Flo and Darlene are very actively involved. Right now, because we're not open, they're out there making phone calls and making sure throughout the year that there's no isolation that we're aware of, that everybody has their needs, people have their meals, So, I mean, there's a lot of additional activities this year because of that we'd like to be able to bring in someone with the state formula grant funding to do some of that activity for outreach in the next year.
Janet, if I could make a comment.
This is Lori LaSalle. I know you weren't on when I introduced you. She's the vice chair of the board.
I had trouble getting on. That's why I was surprised. Someone else was having trouble with the computer.
Okay.
I think the numbers themselves, when you look at the salaries of the other towns, and our pathetic little $20. And this past year with COVID, Joan has had to take on so many additional duties, as Nancy and you have mentioned. She's doing the work of 3 people now. And she certainly has the qualifications that no one would ever apply for this job with all the duties that she has to take on. We are blessed that we have her for what she is doing and doing such a great job. Thankfully, we have her, doing it for us.
To piggyback on that, we do want to maintain that level that we now have, because we've noted we have a real frail elderly population here in Southampton that could use some support. Sure, people come to the center, they're all able-bodied and a little more active, but we have frail folks that need some family support and care that our community can provide if we have the resources.
And Nancy brings up a great point. And I think the other thing that we fail to look at is Joan's personality. People look at her, she's the mother image. And the frail people that Nancy is talking about, when they need someone, they pick up the phone and they go to Joan, and they know they're going to get the support they need. And that is so important. And now that 1/3 of the population is the elderly, they need that support.
Can I just add something?
Yes, please.
I'm on the Master Plan Implementation Committee, and they've done, a lot of data analysis in town. And just to mention here, what's in the pipeline in terms of the senior population in Southampton. 48% of the population of people who are over 20 years of age 48% of the population of people who are over 20 years of age are 60 years old and above. So looking at the pipeline of seniors, not just today, but in the coming years, it's not this number is only going to go up.
Wow.
People are living longer, obviously, and healthy aging is a big issue, and we're trying to promote that as well. Our pickleball courts that are coming up, and our pickleball group, they're just awesome. Which I think there's 3 of you right here on the Zoom meeting, so actually 4, because I think Rini plays pickleball too.
Not yet. We haven't gotten her out there yet.
No.
She has a busy life. So anything more from the finance? You want me to stop this share for now? Are we good?
Yep, we're good on the share. I do have a follow-on question. With regards to the priorities for the program enhancements, how would you rate the requests from 1 to 3? Because if I am understanding correctly, we're looking to correct the wage gap for the director. We're looking to expand the administrative assistant to 10 hours from the general fund. And then the third one is to revise the administrative assistant position to a description of an assistant program director. So of those 3, could you please let us know what are your 1, 2, 3 priorities?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I thought that was included in here somewhere. That's why I'm going back to look, because I know we had this discussion.
It's in the tutorial, but the tutorial budget 1 has to be revised. So it is in
Is that in the other sheet, Joan?
Correct.
Okay, let me go back to the other sheet. I'm sorry. Bear with me for a second.
No problem. Take your time.
Actually, not in that. There's one more.
Oh, one more
attachment.
tutorial. Okay. Yeah, there were 3 attachments. Do you know the name of that one, Joan? I don't know off the top of my head.
So I want to say budget tutorial, but I can read it. Number 1 would.
Yep.
Number one priority would be the COA director to bring the hourly rate up from $20 to $27. Priority two would be to change the title of the administrative assistant to the assistant to the director and increase her hourly rate. And then the last one would be to include the admin position in the town budget completely.
And on the second one, do you have a projected cost on the restructuring of the position?
So right now, we're looking at $18.84 an hour is what we'd like to bring her up to. I did not do a projected cost on what the increase would be.
I just do.
And then that would still be at a 10 hours a week?
Correct. Originally, we had hoped to expand our position, to Fridays, or maybe there's, evenings, but of course, that all changed with COVID. So now we just would like to increase the hourly rate, and we'll look at expanding program in another year.
Yeah, we realize this may be a stepping stone, not all at once, but we do, Joan only works till 3:00. So one of the things a lot of seniors, especially even younger seniors or active seniors, want to have evening activities, and we're restricted. We can't do that because we don't have the coverage to have any evening programs unless we, again, pull funds out of the state formula grant, which is what we've done. So we don't know. I mean, the state formula grant is typically $12 per person per senior, and it's being proposed to cut it back to $9 per senior because of the census going from 1,200 seniors in town to 2,000 plus seniors in town. I guess the state is looking at, a compromise per head count. So, but I know that the MCOA and EOEA and our legislature locally is working to not reduce that dollar amount per person, because we've been trying to manage 2,000 people on a 1,200 per person budget for a number of years. So.
Rachel, do you have any questions?
No, thank you.
So unless you have something further for us.
I can get on my knees if that helps.
We will join up.
Thank you very much for your time, and your questions are always very thoughtful. And we'll get back to you if there are any changes to the job description or anything, but as the job description stands, pay scale is much lower than comparable positions in town. That's all. Okay?
All right.
Thank you, everybody. Now on to our next best friends, the library and the fire department. So,
Okay.
thank you very much.
Thank you.
We'll wait for Chair Cole to come back on, just a few moments.
I'll keep an eye on him so I can admit him.
Barbara hasn't come on, right?
comes.
I'm back. Thank you.
Welcome back.
Did Barbara get? Barbara's been trying to get on. She can't. Not having any luck.
Does she have the right meeting information?
Yes, I called her and she has it.
Here comes Barbara.
Persistence.
There you go.
You made it, Barbara. Thank you. All right, so we are ready to move on to B and the library. Who is carrying the baton for the library?
I'm Barbara, the director, Barbara Golden, and a couple of people have joined since the last introductions. Maxine was here. Debbie Pinsky is also a trustee, and Jessica Huffnagel is a trustee, chair of the trustees.
Okay, welcome. Thanks for coming.
So we had a budget attachment of a few pages, budget notes of a few pages, as well as the spreadsheet.
You want me to try to bring up the spreadsheet? I'm going to just shut everything down and give it another shot to see if it can go. So let me see if I can do that.
All right.
Now, I'm going to try and share my screen, and then I'm going to open up the document, see if it works that way.
Oh,
Nice kitties.
very nice.
That looks like it is it.
Okay, here we go. All right.
Thank
Good.
you.
Good show. Thanks, Mary.
Hey.
So when the trustees and I met, the issue for the library is the MAR, or municipal appropriation requirement. And that is determined by the Mass Board of Library Commissioners. It follows a formula, which I did put in the notes and also at the bottom here, but most of it is on the first page of the budget notes. And that's the requirement, $170,056. So last year, our budget was cut by quite a lot. We applied for a waiver, and I believe they're going to give it to us because we were not cut disproportionately. If the library is cut disproportionately from other departments, they won't give us a waiver. But since we weren't, I believe we will get a waiver. The only thing is, if you keep getting a waiver year after year, you fall further and further from the requirement, and then it gets harder and harder to get a waiver. So are there any questions about that? So in the first page of the budget notes, I do have the Massachusetts general law that concerns the requirement. The other requirement is the materials budget is supposed to be 19% of the MAR, and that's reflected in the materials line. So those are requirements from the state. And when getting accreditation means we also get money from the state, which was over $10,000 last year, and it's in the notes. And also we get to belong to the interlibrary loans, which means that our patrons can borrow materials from all the other libraries in Central and Western Mass and even out of the this area into the eastern part of the state and even to other states. If we lose accreditation, they will not be able to borrow materials except only what we have in the library physically itself. And a lot of people do interlibrary loans, and I have the figures in here. During the pandemic year, almost 6,000 items were interlibrary loaned, and the year before, which was a more normal year, almost 8,000 items. And we get delivery trucks 3 times a week, and they bring all these items from all over the place, and then we sort them out and people come and pick them up. Even during the pandemic, people have been picking up the interlibrary loans. The interlibrary loans were shut down for a little while, as we were, but we did start up in mid-June, and we have handed out almost 3,000 curbside pickup bags at this point. We can't be open inside, although we were for a little while, but we have continued curbside pickup since mid-June. We also, of course, have a lot of virtual programming, and Johanna's even had some outdoor programming, including Frozen, and when it was Frozen, in, I think it was December. So that's why we put that in budget 1, because of the requirements.
Barbara, can I ask a question on the MAR? How is that determined? Is that
okay? There's a formula, and it's on the first budget page. It says it's calculated using the prior 3 years municipal appropriations or the MAR figure, whichever is higher. So, and then it's the average of the 3 years, and it's increased by 2.5%. Rising costs kind of thing. So do you have the budget notes? It's in the first page.
Yeah. Sorry about that.
Yeah. So it's a little complicated, and I always check my figures with Liz Babbitt at the Mass Board of Library Commissioners just to make sure I have the right figures. So it's not just the last 3 years, because last year we didn't reach the MAR. So that figure that the town gave us isn't what they consider. They consider the MAR or higher. That's why if you keep getting cut, it gets further and further from the requirement, and then you have a lot of trouble catching up.
Barbara, I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
You had mentioned that the 2021 budget showed a bottom line of $157,365. However, the state did not consider that amount when they were calculating the MAR, because in reading the information on the municipal appropriation requirement, they talked about the 3 years of the appropriated dollars.
That's a good question. So I had sent in the 157, but that wasn't the MAR. So the MAR for last year was 160 something. And so you see where it says the MAR or whichever is higher. So our last year 157 was lower than the MAR, and they used the MAR figure, which was something like 167 something.
Okay,
so it isn't just the last 3 years.
All right, so it's not based on actually.
Yeah, it's not the last 3 years. It's a little confusing. I made a mistake myself. That's why I check it. Yeah, it's not just the last 3 years. 2 years ago and 3 years ago, we did make the MAR, but last year we didn't, so they count the MAR, not what we were given.
So
yeah, I thought the same thing you did, but.
So even though we get a waiver, we're still responsible for it.
Yes, exactly. That's true. Yeah. And that's why it gets harder if you keep going down. And so the trustees directed me to put this in budget 1 because of that reason.
Yep.
And there's 3 here on the call.
Okay.
Yeah, it's, they want to keep the quality of libraries going very well in the state, and that's the reason for all of this. Ed's been through this before, right, Ed, with West Springfield, I think.
Yes, yeah. we had a couple of times in West Springfield we had to ask for a waiver.
I think this is the first time I've ever had to do a waiver, and I don't think the library in Southampton has had to do a waiver. Not sure if ever.
Yeah, probably the last time anyone probably would have looked at a waiver just from general economic conditions would have been around 2009.
Yeah, for obvious reasons, I guess, in 2000.
Right. Yeah. So, and so the big thing is that we not be cut disproportionately compared to other departments. And then there's these two requirements. There's also a requirement for being open a certain number of hours, but we meet that even though we were closed Monday.
And Barbara, what are the minimum hours of required for the library?
I think it's 25, and we're open more than that even now.
Barbara, how many substitutes are in that $6,700?
That's our entire substitute line. Right now, we have absolutely no substitutes. So it's difficult, you know, to take vacation. Of course, during the pandemic, nobody's taking a whole week really that I know of, but that's our entire substitute line for vacation, sick leave, personal leave. It's also for workshops. When we have special events, we sometimes use a substitute. But we had to close Mondays because of the big.
But do you have substitutes in?
We have substitutes. Yeah, we have substitutes, but we can't use them right now.
Okay.
Yeah, we have 5, I think, substitutes, and
yep.
They're all trained, and just like the, you know, Lisa and Johanna and I on the circulation desk, they can all use the circulation desk.
Okay.
Yeah, so we only have 4 regular employees, and one of them's only 9 hours a week. That's Emily. We have Lisa Shea, who's 28 hours a week. Johanna Douglas is 30, and I'm 35. So it's considering the amount of hours of staff, I think we do a pretty good job. You know, it's a small staff.
Yep.
Barbara, could you just go down? I know you said you have 4 personnel assigned. Could you just go down, you know, what they receive per hour and how many hours per work, so I can just, you know.
Absolutely, yeah. So I'm $24.70 an hour for 35 a week.
Right.
Lisa Shea is $17.34 an hour for 28 hours a week.
What is that position? Is that a librarian, child librarian, or what is the?
No, the children's librarian is Johanna Rodriguez Douglas. She's 30 hours a week for $18.87. Lisa Shea is the technical services and circulation. She's the one who processes all the books, does all the cataloging, and some of the ordering, and as well as the circulation desk. And then Emily Munska is 9 hours a week. She's circulation.
And what is the hourly rate for the circulation desk?
Let's see. It's not on this sheet. She's in the $14 an hour range. I can get you the exact amount. For some reason, it's not on my sheet. Oh, I have $14.28. Sorry, it just says circulation. I can check if that's changed, but that's what I have here.
And is there a senior circulation librarian?
Well, we don't really have that title. I'm the director. Johanna's the children's librarian. So Lisa was senior, but she's now also the technician, so she's double. I guess you could call her senior librarian and technician.
And the hourly rate in hours per week for that individual?
I think I already gave it to you. It's 28 hours a week at 1734. Oh, I guess I gave you people's names and you want the position name. Is that it?
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Okay. Okay.
That's the other thing that jumped out at me, Barbara, was your issues with the boiler that needs to be replaced.
Yeah, Ed knows all about it. Yes, it does need to be replaced.
But we don't have there's no dollar amount in here for that.
I think it'll go through capital improvement. Is that correct, Ed?
Correct. That would be a capital request.
Yeah, we're going to have to go through capital improvement. Yeah, it all of a sudden, something happened a few months ago, and our HVAC person was able to do a fix to get us through the winter.
No.
Ed knows all about that because he helped with that. So, so far, so good.
But you'll be charged
Knock on
for
wood, don't jinx us, please.
What's that?
Knock on wood, don't jinx us, please.
Right. Lots of wood. Yeah, we will have to go in front of the Capital Improvement Committee because that's, it's not covered by our budget. That's for sure.
Right. But
we went in front of them a few years ago. They did an upgrade to the HVAC, but the boiler wasn't replaced.
Okay. But the library would be responsible for the amortization of that funding, right?
No.
No, when we apply for a capital improvement project or a capital, whatever you call it, we get quotes and it goes totally through capital improvement. We don't have to pay any for that.
It ended up coming out of capital stabilization.
Oh, all right. Okay. Okay. Any other questions?
Barbara, I have a question regarding the MAR.
Yes.
I know that it's a requirement for the state, but do they give you, are there confines within how that's spent, or as long as it's within that appropriation?
Well, the other one is how much you spend on library materials. It's 19% of the MAR, but no, they don't overlook exactly how we spend it. We do give a report. We have to fill out 2 state reports that does cover everything we're spending, but they don't really, as long as you fill everything in correctly, according to what you spend, they don't oversee that. They just generally the total town municipal appropriations and the materials budget. Materials includes everything. It includes ebooks, Canopy, like streaming videos, which we just got, books, everything, magazines, subscriptions, e-subscriptions. A lot of it is, on streaming now. And Libby is our Overdrive app, so that covers everything. So materials is pretty wide, anything patrons are using.
So that you can easily get to that 19%.
Well, here it's part of our budget, so we don't have to worry about it because it's right there. The 32,310.64 is our material. That's the requirement. It changes every year depending on the MAR.
Any other issues, comments?
Just a general question. During normal operations, not the pandemic time, what is your monthly patrons, walk-ins and then online? Is it equal, or is there one more than the other?
Actually, the ebooks, they thought for a long time it was going to surpass books, but it hasn't. The physical items are still the majority. You want to know how many people walk in? I do have that at the office, but do you want me to send that?
No, I just wanted general, just generally,
Sometimes we would get 100 people a day, sometimes 60 coming in when, before the pandemic, and we get, and that doesn't count. Well, there's also people who would come to programs. For instance, we might get 50 people at a story hour. Special event might be even more. We do have a meeting room, so, we can accommodate, but not 100. We have to put the larger group in the middle of the library. So, I would say, some of the programs only, bring in maybe 15, like the book club. But so it's 15 till maybe 75 people usually. 100 would be when we have a special event for summer reading, a big kickoff. Does that answer your question, Mary?
Thank you.
This budget would ensure that the library is open 5 days a week?
It would be 6 days a week. We used to be open 6 days a week. Yeah.
Right, so you've got a Saturday in here as well.
Yeah, Saturday is only 3 hours and 10 to 1. Friday's only 3 hours, 1 to 4.
Okay.
And then we have evening hours. So we're 10 hours on Tuesday and Thursday, and Monday and Wednesday we're 6.
All right. Have you gotten any negative feedback from townspeople about the library?
We get really positive feedback there. Some of them say that we're getting them through the pandemic when they come pick up their curbside pickup. Yep. They seem very appreciative of the, a lot of them would like to get in the building. So what we're doing now is we're bringing out our new books and new videos, all the new materials outside. Like today was a nice day. We brought it all outside for browsing outside, until people can come in the building again. But when we had limited browsing for a while, people were very happy to be in the building.
Yep.
Barbara, who manages your webpage?
We have Ann Campbell, who's our web designer, and Johanna Rodriguez Douglas, our children's librarian, does all the posting and everything.
It's wonderful.
She does our social media. She sends out the newsletter, which will be coming out next week. We do a monthly e-newsletter. I don't know, maybe you're not on the list. Do you want, if we have your email, we can send you. The people who used to be on the Finance Committee, I think, were on our e-newsletter list, but we might not have all the new people.
Is there a cost with maintaining your web page, or is that done?
Yeah, that's part of municipal library expenses, includes everything to do with our upkeep, but it really isn't that bad because it's WordPress, so the staff can do it. It used to be a much more complicated. Our old website used to be much more complicated. It was HTML. It was a staff member who ran it, Carol Goulet, who retired. But this is much easier, the WordPress. So we can manage most of it.
It's very user-friendly and very inviting to look at the pages and everything.
Oh, great. I'm glad you looked at it. Yeah, so when we got Canopy, for instance, we couldn't do that. So we had to ask the web designer to do the plug or whatever it's called. So we do have to ask her sometimes, but Johanna does pretty well. So yeah, that's part of her job. Her, 30 hours a week? Yeah. So besides being the children's librarian, she does the web stuff, all the web stuff, and social media. We're now on YouTube because of the pandemic. We have a YouTube channel for the first time, which is, a lot of things changed with the pandemic. We had to go online for so many things. We got a Zoom account through the CARES Act. The book club, 11 people are on the book club on Zoom this week. So we're trying to reach people.
Excellent. Okay, any other questions?
I just have one last question. The request for the subs, the 6,700, if that's not funded, what would the impact be on the library?
Well, then it's hard to. Well, we probably have to stay closed on Monday, and it's hard for us to take vacation, sick leave. It's a very small staff, so that makes it very difficult for us to go to workshops, vacation, sick leave, personal. all of that.
So you would definitely have to close on Monday.
Yeah, if we didn't get the subline back, right.
Yep.
Monday wasn't currently on your schedule, right? Wasn't it closed always on Monday?
No, I've been there 9 years, and this is the first year we've closed on Monday.
Okay.
Do the trustees want to say anything? Can they say something if they want to add anything?
Sure.
I actually had a question, Barb. If we don't have the subline, that would take us below the MAR, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so that is the other impact too, is that we would fall into that hot water. It wouldn't just be the substitution. So I just wanted to throw that in there. I think the staff has been doing great. I certainly fall into that category of people that feel like I'm getting through the pandemic with the help of the library. You know, as a Southampton resident, not just as a trustee, I have kiddos at home, and it's nice to bring new materials in and send the old ones out. And I'm really excited to check out Canopy. The fact that folks can stream movies that are current movies right from home. I think that's been a great recent addition. So kudos to everyone over there.
Yeah, we had some patrons who requested it because Canopy is different than all the other materials. They can't get it through, say, Easthampton. It has to be their hometown. So we had some requests for that. Well, another thing that happens if you lose accreditation is, like I said, you can't do interlibrary loans. And other libraries, the Mass Board of Library Commissioners asks them not to lend to people from uncertified towns. So it has implications.
Yeah, I'd like to say that it has big implications if we don't get our MAR and we lose our certification. I think that's really important for everyone to keep in mind.
Right. Yeah. I would think that if the library is decertified, that sends a lot of messages to people.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, we did get a waiver, but like I said, you know, I'm not sure how many years they would go for that.
Right. Right.
Well, like you said, Barbara, we just keep falling farther and farther behind financially and dig ourselves in a hole, and it'll be really hard for the town to fund us 3 or 4 years down the road if we keep going in this direction.
Okay. All members of the committee comfortable now?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right. Barbara,
Thank you, Barbara.
Thank you.
Thank
Everybody,
you.
thank you.
Thanks, Barbara.
Good job.
Nice to
Have a good
see you
night.
all.
Keep
You
up the
too.
good work.
Thank you for, you know, all your work.
And thank you. Take care. All right. We're down to item C, Fire Department. Chief, you still on board with us?
Yeah, I'm still here. Can you hear me?
Yes, thanks for your patience. Welcome aboard.
You guys, I'm sure, have a longer night than I, hopefully. Well, don't mean that the wrong way.
Well, the floor is yours.
Yep. So in this past year, we'd taken $25,000 out of the budget. Some of the concern, though, is there's no real room to even have made those cuts this fiscal year. It's really a shot in the dark, hoping that I can perform to that. Back in 2017, the town had voted on town meeting to fund a second shift. And we actually have stretched that into 24/7 because we used to have 3 shifts. We've stretched it into 24/7 coverage at no additional incurred cost, just because we found we could manage within that budget. But it's such a gamble. I mean, if we get a fire, if we get major incidents, our money in our wage accounts can dwindle quickly. And so I'm really at like snowstorm budget for DPW, I'm kind of at the whim of the weather and, what comes our way in regards to emergencies. So when I went for the level funding, I had to add that 25,000 back because I don't even know if I can perform to that level this year. I'm doing the best that I can. But we've already had some unexpected expenses in regards to some fire truck repair and some additional costs in regards to some other programming that needed to be installed in regards to our quality assurance program and a few other things. So that's the level funded budget. Is there any question in regards to that budget?
Let's see. I guess I had a question on the fire truck maintenance.
Yes, I created a line item because I've been having problems trying to do, because that's such an unexpected expense generally each year. It really does swing greatly. And so I was looking when I created the line item to track it. But I had a little problem because accounting didn't want to defer anything to that account because it was not funded. It's never been a funded line item. And so I take money out of either fire expense or ambulance expense. But for some other reasons that we'll probably get into a little bit later, I really would like to fund those accounts. And this year I have had some pretty good costs in regards to maintenance, especially for fire trucks, just because they're a bit older. Our ambulance is newer and hasn't been a maintenance burden. Does that answer your question?
Yes, I guess. I was looking at the number of 26.1, and you said that in the past fire truck maintenance has been included in fire department expense, but it doesn't look like it was backed out. Is it still in there? Is it in there twice in the 26.1 and as the 10.281?
Yeah, 26.1 is my fire department expense, not my fire truck maintenance expense.
Right, but the in the 2020 budget, you have no amount for fire truck maintenance. So I'm assuming it's
I've never been funded for fire truck maintenance.
Right, but is it in that 26.1 though for the maintenance that you did have?
Well, out of that 26.1, I had to take $10,000 out this year for fire truck maintenance.
Yep.
So it had to come from somewhere.
Yep. No, I understand. I'm just making sure that I'm on the same.
I don't know what to cut. At some point, do we stop going to calls so we can save money?
Yeah.
I'm not sure where to draw that line.
Right. Okay.
Are there any other questions?
Any other questions?
Chief, hi, this is Mary. Nice to meet you,
Hi,
Chief.
Good to meet you, Mary.
If you could just help me on your personnel, I know that you are full-time, but
Correct.
Could you just give us a breakdown of the other members that form the team, your firefighters and your EMS? How many are part-time, how many are on call, et cetera? That would help us understand when we're looking at the wages lines.
Sure. I'm the only full-time. Everyone else is per diem. So they have an hourly rate and they come in for either scheduled shifts, minimal of two-man, two-person, 24/7, 365. And for fire calls, when a fire call comes in, they get paid by the hour for their response.
Is it a set per diem rate for a firefighter, or is it vary on their levels of?
There's a whole matrix. So like a firefighter who goes into a fire, to fight fire, rescue someone, they can get paid, $15 an hour. Same with an EMT who's making a decision on someone's life. It starts at $15.31. It increases depending on their years of experience, whether they have accredited fire department training, fire academy training, and what level of EMT certification they have. So if a EMTB is kind of like a associate's degree, then a paramedic is more like a master's degree. So so it varies depending on what they have for education and abilities and experience.
Currently on your roster, how many firefighters?
I don't have the roster in front of me. Most of my staff are cross-trained as firefighters and EMTs. So out of the 45 members, there may be 2 to 3 that are only EMTs.
Okay, so there's you as a full-time, and then there's 45 total firefighters, EMTs. Is that?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, 45. Okay. All right.
And how many were EMTs again? Was it 3?
Yeah, I mean, it's better if I prepare this and send it to you for exact numbers, because right now I'm shooting from the hip because I wasn't expecting this particular line of questioning.
Okay.
But I'm happy to do my best to answer it. And so, so if a call comes in, we don't know if it's going to be a fire call or an EMS call. We have no idea. So the idea with staffing is that I try and staff to a level that we can respond to an emergency that happens that is either looking for a fire department or an EMS call. Ideally, on the EMS side, we want to respond at a level of a paramedic because we're certified through the state as a paramedic level ambulance service. So my staffing varies greatly. I put predominance on having a paramedic. It's really a requirement with our state and ambulance license that I work as diligently as I can to get at least a paramedic per each shift. But these are all part-time guys. It's their second job. We're just barely keeping up with industry standards, some of the independents, AMR, Action Ambulance. We're not keeping up with other full-time departments, but we're a little behind on some of the per diem rates that they're getting in other communities. But I've got a good group. We've got most of the firefighter, EMT, paramedics. They come from other full-time departments. If I would feel more comfortable to look at a roster if you want a breakdown of which ones are firefighter, EMT, paramedics, which ones are firefighter, EMT basics, which ones are just firefighters, and which ones are just EMT basics. And I have a couple EMT just paramedics as well.
I was just interested in the total number of personnel assigned to the fire station.
45.
45, okay. The other question I have is in regards to the fire department expenses. Can you let us know, like, I would assume there's uniform requirements or clothing allowances that you have that's built into your expenses?
There's none. There never has been. So I try and buy T-shirts when money's available through the CARES funding. I've funded it. I've gotten funding for uniforms sometimes because my budget is it's hard to pin. People don't work just 40 hours. They can work more than that depending on events that come in. When there's been surpluses, I've then tried to work with accounting to buy uniforms, whether it be a coat, a reflective coat. Like I say, through the CARES funding, I'm hoping to get a pair of pants. With a bloodborne pathogen, these folks are purchasing their own clothing right now. The department was only funded in 2017 for minimal staffing. It has never had the luxury of a clothing allowance as PD or DPW has. The only one that has a clothing allowance is myself. And honestly, I don't always spend it because I'm more concerned with keeping the fire department and getting as much as I can to keep operations working with safety in mind for each of the folks working. So there's no line item for, I mean, if I've got a $21,000 fire department expense line items and I spend $10,000 or $15,000 on a truck, and I've got to get computer paper and you know, we added a trailer. I got to pay for gas and heat and electricity. Well, that comes out of building expense. There's not a lot of money. I don't know how to.
Regarding fuel, what's the annual fuel for your vehicles? Do you have a figure as to what you spend?
I don't. I mean, honestly, I'd be more than happy to answer questions, and I really would want to give you succinct answers. And so if you're looking for itemized things to that nature, I can certainly work to do that and be more than happy to provide it. One of the challenges that I've had with fuel is that the DPW does, in the past, has not submitted fuel charges to me. They've gone directly to accounting, and accounting had just taken them out. And so then I would have to readjust all of my figures when I got the spreadsheets from them for expense and revenue reports. One of the concerns that I have is as we move forward, we've got a mandate by Medicare, which is going to affect what they pay per call, because we charge per call. For a basic level call, we charge, it's about $1,200. For a paramedic level call, it's almost $2,000. Medicare pays a fraction of that. They might pay, you know, $365 on a basic call, and some people don't pay at all. So the challenge with Medicare, though, is that they want a cost estimation for fuel costs, for office expenses allocated in regards to EMS. They want a breakdown for all of our EMS related expense. And that's a challenge for me. I'm the only full-time person there. We haven't been established long. We haven't built up maintenance line items. I mean, there's never been a funded thing. We've never had uniform funded things. You're asking for a lot of specific questions that I'd be happy to give you a history on how best they were spent. But every year, if you look back through records and what final numbers were, I've always overspent my line items for expense accounts historically for probably 8 years, because there's been, you know, if there's money left over in wages at all, I use it for shortfalls in expense items.
Could I just ask a question?
Sure.
On
please.
on your ambulance fees, what do you estimate your revenue is about on average each year?
I have a billing company, Coastal Billing.
Right.
I'd have to go by our revenue sheets, which have been a little bit slow, only because we've had some our accounting department, as you know, is going through some transition. Generally, from historic, we're about $200,000 a year. And as calls increase, that number should go up. But it really gets dependent on some of like which ones are Medicare and those sorts of things. So there is some fluctuation. There's not a guarantee. I have dedicated some staff just to billing, because there's a lot of procedural stuff that happens on the billing side of things, even though we have a billing company that's not in-house, that's outside. There's for every procedure that gets done, there's paperwork that each of the employees needs to check off and put in pertinent information to validate in order to get full costs from each of the calls that goes out. So if you do a paramedic level service, there's a basic things. I think it's IV and a few other things that make it with a paramedic on board who does certain interventions, and that deems it a paramedic level call. But then there's extra things. So if you give an updraft or different interventions, you can charge additional monies in regards to that. And so some of my part-time staffing, I've tried to utilize them in roles that will go back through each and every call to try and maximize what we're getting for revenue. And honestly, by putting someone into that position, there was a revenue increase just from their scrutiny of calls and documentation, we probably saw a $20,000 to $40,000 increase in revenue. So that's worked out well.
All right, good, thank you.
Sure.
Chief, what about your first item on your justification sheet, your administrative aid? It sounds to me as though that's a necessity.
It is. It's one that's been kicked down the road for a few years now. It becomes more and more of a challenge, especially when you have things like this new Medicare documentation that they're requiring for us. That's going to start in January of 2021. It was supposed to start this year, but because of the pandemic, they put it off. And honestly, there's a lot of work needed to itemize everything individually. And there's a lot of sort of administrative secretarial type work of just in that organization. And so there's already burdens of, every 45 people, all the members that I have in the department, all of them are required to meet standards for certification within their level of certification. Many of them, there's 4 or 5 different, CPR, ACLS, 12-week competency. There's a bunch of things that they have to perform to in order to maintain their level of proficiency. So there's really a lot of paperwork that is intrinsic to ambulance operation, and the programming has gotten more succinct. Each thing that is done is checked. It used to be you write a narrative and they paid out a general amount, and now for each thing that gets done, you're checking off. It has to be included in your narrative, and whatever procedure needs to be documented in 2 different places, or else you have the potential of not getting paid. There's just a very large amount of documentation that really is intrinsic to the EMS industry. And I'm the only full-time guy. And so I delegate to the best of my ability. I have tremendous staff. They do a great job. It's a second job for every single one of them. Not one person on the department is at their primary job to work in this ambulance service here in Southampton. But on the bright side, this per diem staff that we do have, I've got individuals with 30 years of experience that we couldn't afford to pay them on a full-time basis, but because it works out as a good second job for them, we have a high level of care, a high level of proficiency in regards to these folks. And it's utilizing a lot of those folks, taking some of the strengths from the different people, and trying and eking out basically getting the organization and the paperwork, delegating responsibilities. We work under a chain of command, paramilitary chain of command. So as they go up in rank, they get a little bit more money, but as they get more money, there's an increase in duties. The challenge becomes that, like just for instance, the one that I talked about, my billing lieutenant, who's a tremendous individual. He is also an Amherst firefighter. He's been in he's been a paramedic for over 10 years, and he's one of my newer paramedics. He's very concise, does a great job, has done a wonderful job increasing billing, but he's got some family stuff that's happening now, and this being a second job, it's putting him in a limited capacity to be there. And so with 45 part-time people, it's a bit of herding cats. And you really do depend on some of these folks, like this individual, who now has got some life changes, which may be just temporary, but they may be longer. He's a proven excellent employee, so certainly not going to take him off the roster, but he may not put in the time that I need in order to keep track of all this stuff. I'll try and step other people up to backfill some of those roles, but it's an ongoing challenge, and there really is a lot of documentation that is part of the job, part of the management of the department. And, you know, I'm one of the few departments in town that doesn't have an administrative assistant of any kind. And I know that there's challenges to funding. I know there've been proposal for $12,000 or $15,000 in the past to try and get an administrative assistant. I know there's no money in town, and so what I proposed in this budget cycle, the budget 2, was to half fund that, so I could at least bring some of my folks in that could function and focus on some of those administrative duties that need to happen, because as they come in and they're on shift and a call goes out, now they're dropping all of their paperwork to write out on a call, and it's not conducive to a high level of proficiency within all that meticulous documentation. So that's why that line item I put in for $5,000, which is really, you know, a half or a third of where it should be. I know we don't have money, but I thought it was a reasonable request to try and really handle the challenges.
So the administrative work that is being done currently is being done by one of your or varied number of the 45 members.
That's correct. Yeah, that's correct. I've also, we've gotten, one of the challenges we had is with our quality assurance program. It's a difficult position just in its oversight of peers. I oversee it. I manage a good amount of it, but we actually hired an outside agency that does a third-party review of every call that we go on. And it's really to ensure that every call is to the highest level of care. And the business is to provide a high level of care, the highest level of care that we can to the residents of town. So that's been an added expense. I probably included some of that in regards with the ambulance expense, EMS expense. And there's a couple other, I'd also added in a program that is a computer-aided program. It's a digital program, I shouldn't say computer-aided. We actually run it on a cell phone. We have a cell phone that needs to be in the ambulance as a second means of communication if we have a radio communication failure. On that cell phone, we've installed software that is a inventory management, and it's also a every day the stock of the ambulance and fire trucks. There's a rotating cycle where every piece gets gone through. So every day the ambulance, there's a stock that goes through. Once a week, for every truck that we have in house, there's an extensive, check the oil, tire pressure, a myriad of things that are included in that. And so there's a software program that is helping to do that. But that's an added expense onto an expense line item that hasn't gone up. I mean, honestly, my building expense and fire expense used to be all one, and then it got divided out. But there's been no increase in 8 years. And that's the same for my EMS expense. There's been no increase, even though we've added sleeping quarters, added staff. There's been no increase in EMS expense. And I've made that work because there's usually been some flexibility in the budget. At the end of the year, if there's been less calls, then we get some things, and if there's no money, then we don't that year. But it sort of keeps us functioning, but barely. And so this year, as I looked at these outside costs, which are really going up, and added some of these additional programs and redundancy programs in. I put in for a $4,000 increase onto the EMS expense line item, which there again, I don't believe that I'm asking for Taj Mahal, this is really bare bones, and it's really direct costs associated with direct increased expenses directly related to EMS. Does that answer your question? I'm sorry, it's just a lot of information, and I just want to make sure you're getting what you are asking.
Yes.
Chief, I have a question, theoretical question, if you don't mind.
Sure, no problem.
For the administrative position, theoretically, do you feel that if that individual were tasked with better qualifying the acuities to be billed out, that could actually be a net zero cost to that they would actually be able to acquire enough revenues to sustain their position?
If they were dedicated to that, you would have to follow the data and do a data mine to try and discern that revenue increase is directly proportional to that work. The challenge becomes that the individual that really does that meticulous documentation in regards to billing questions needs to be a paramedic, because there's a higher level of training that identifies the requirements that are pertinent to each call. So I don't know if and then the challenge then becomes that person would be then good for billing, but it wouldn't be the one that you'd necessarily want to do clerical work and make files, which, honestly, I bought 4 filing cabinets out of my own money to bring into the station because there were years of boxes and no filing system in the department. And a lot of time is spent making files, every application that comes through, doing query checks. We do everything soup to nuts at the station, and we work pretty independently from town hall. The other thing is, if somebody deals with personnel files, there's some HIPAA things that I need to be cognizant of, and there's certain files that they can access and others that they can't. So I'd really want to, depending on the level of training that I would have for an administrative assistant. If I brought them in just for an administrative assistant, I would probably, depending on their level of training, I would design take all the job functions that we have and really figure out which ones would be appropriate for their level of training. The other ones that aren't appropriate for them, like we do now, are delegated throughout the department to the best of my ability. Does that answer your question? I don't mean to go roundabout, and I know that you're trying to ask a direct question, but there's a lot of duties. Some you could have done by folks that had had more clerical training, and that would be quite helpful, even just with payroll and some of that. But then there's some that you can't delegate in that same way, and there's just some challenges to how you do every part of it.
Understood. Thank you.
Sure. Yep. Any other questions? So I guess we talked about that administrative position. Do you want to just kind of go down, because the other way, and we did talk about fire truck maintenance. Do you want me to go more into that one, or you got a good idea that fire truck maintenance is just such a challenging one, because anything for a fire truck is just extremely expensive.
Yep.
And so, to get a sticker and a safety check, which would just be a sticker for a normal person, is probably a $300 expense for us. The amount of oil, for a truck is just, all of a sudden a tune-up is $500. If you're replacing batteries, I had a battery with an inverter that burned out on one of our engines. That was $800 in batteries just for one truck. I had a pump, a transfer pump that had been an ongoing problem. I had spent $15,000 and sent a truck to the eastern part of the state and had them rebuild that transmission, only to have the transmission have a reoccurring failure 2 years later. I brought in an independent mechanic who used to be the fire department mechanic for the city of Northampton. I've got a lot of faith in him. He's since retired and is on his own. And he dropped the transmission in-house. It cost me, shooting from the top of my head, $7,000 or $8,000, half the cost of what it cost me to, paying for two guys to drive down to the East Coast, and then drive back and then go get it. It's just, and the truck is out of service for that length of time. So there was a reduction. It didn't cost me $15,000 again. It only cost me $8,000 this year, but it's still very expensive to work on trucks. Brakes, everything is just inflated over what you would think of for your car.
How many fire trucks do you have to maintain, Chief?
We have approximately 10. So we have
fire trucks.
We have 2 engines, brush truck. We had a tanker, and we really need a tanker. We'd gotten our tanker from it was state surplus property. The problem with the tanker was it's a 12-speed synchromatic transmission, Allison transmission, that you actually drive it better without a clutch, but it takes a lot of understanding of driving a truck to drive that kind of a truck, and it's a lot of weight. I was trying to figure out a way that I could get an automatic transmission into that truck, just because a new tanker is an extreme cost that the town would have challenged to provide. I couldn't do it. I then had some valve problems on this truck. I ended up giving it back to the state. So it's one truck off our fleet. I'm hoping that I'd get some time to write a grant, because there's some federal grant money that's out there. But that takes time. And everything is time management. And when all the little details need to be accomplished, sometimes you have to pick and choose. I've been successful. I've written almost $1 million worth of grants in another community that I worked for, but I didn't have the responsibilities that I oversight for the entire department, being the only full-time person in this department. There's some challenges. We have utility trucks, the ambulances.
You have 2
so I guess, yeah, we have two ambulances. Yeah. So numbers are down. So I guess I think of them more individually. So there's less than that. I guess we've actually reduced our fleet, because when we had gotten the new administrative vehicle, our utility vehicle was very old. The old administrative vehicle went down to a utility truck because it doesn't need to do emergency response. So there's 2 engines, there's 2 ambulances, and a brush truck. So approximately you have that's only 7. We do need to think about a tanker. I'm not sure if I do have truck replacement schedules for everything. It's one of the things that was not done prior to my arrival, and I've done truck replacement schedule on each vehicle. The only one that's off the list is that tanker, and it is going to have to be dealt with at some point. I've set up revolving funds that there's money that gets taken out yearly from our ambulance revenue to put into an account for the sole purpose of purchasing another ambulance. Most departments run a 10-year, run an ambulance for 10 years, and then they replace it. Because our call volume isn't as high, I put our ambulances on a 15-year replacement schedule. One of the challenges I'd had was that the 2 ambulances were bought 1 year apart. Fortunately or unfortunately, we had one that was just a money pit. We had to drive it down to New Jersey to get a factory fix, and the cabin chassis had intrinsic problems that just this truck was never going to be a viable unit for us. And so we ended up purchasing a new ambulance. That helped in that we got a new ambulance and functional trucks. And it also helped because it put it onto a replacement schedule, on that 15-year replacement schedule, in a pretty good spot. So when we have to go buy a new ambulance, there should be money in that set-aside account that we do every year to purchase a new ambulance without having to go to the town for additional funds. I'm hoping that'll be the case. It looks like it will be at this point, unless something completely unforeseen comes up. So yeah, I guess approximately 7 trucks, but I feel like it's, I haven't eaten my dinner yet. I feel like I might be missing something. The other thing that we do need to look at is something that can get us into the woods for both the purposes of wildland fire, brush fire, and also for extrication, just if someone has a chainsaw accident, snowmobile accident, a dirt bike accident, which we've had happen in the past. I have utilized other communities. I've gotten from West Springfield a gator to go into the woods for a rescue, but it takes 45 minutes to do that. I have set up with our burning permit money revolving account that our burning permit money goes in. I'm hopeful that we will add to our vehicles with a gator from the funding of burning permits. So there does need to be, so there's 7 trucks now, but we do need to increase, we need to get a gator, we need to get that tanker eventually. So that's our truck manifest.
Chief, can I go back?
I'm sorry. I do have one other engine, but honestly, the other engine is, it's not mothballed, but I'm not sure why Southampton had 3 engines. Doesn't really make sense for the department. And so I made a conscious choice when I built the fire truck replacement schedule as that one has a problem, I do not spend. If it's significant money, I won't rebuild it. And it may be, it didn't pass its pump test this year, and I didn't include it in the 7, that would make 8. But I'm actually thinking of just taking that one completely out of the fleet, just because we don't need 3 engines. 2 engines is more than sufficient for the town. And I'm sorry, what was the next question?
I guess I had a question on the Medicare issue.
Sure.
Just out of curiosity, do you have any idea as to what percentage of your costs are reimbursable by Medicare? Not the amount, but I mean, if you've got 10 ambulance calls, let's say, do you have any feel for what percentage of the costs involved in those 10 gets reimbursed by Medicare? Because I'd
have to do a data mine through the billing company to try and ascertain that. And some of the problem is you go into a household, and our primary focus is patient care. It's not really to figure out the billing, and so actually the billing it goes through our internal stuff to make sure that we're dotting I's, crossing T's, doing all of whatever we've done for. And then it goes to the billing company. The billing company figures out who the insurance person is. Sometimes, depending on type of insurance, it'll cover all or a percentage. If it's Medicare, then it gets directly billed to Medicare. Medicare is challenging to work with. We have to pay Medicare to process our bills. So I had to use my personal credit card with Medicare. I paid $365 because I needed a credit card, which I don't know how many municipalities have easy access to a credit card. But they needed that money before they would process our bills to them. And then they would process our bills and pay us their reduced amount. So Medicare is government, and it has their own criteria that they work with. And they are framing this new initiative that will start in 2021 of itemizing costs, EMS costs, to justify why they only give us a certain amount, but they're billing it like you can get more because you can itemize and prove to us that it's going to cost more, which I absolutely will. I believe that through documentation, I mean, I've built databases, and that's why I tried to create line items to really make it so that costs can be easily taken, so you can data mine a cost and attribute it to EMS. So in some ways, I'm looking forward to this. Go ahead.
So the rates then are not universal rates; they're individual rates. If we can justify to Medicare that it cost us, $50 on a $100 bill, then they'll reimburse $50, or do they basically say, well,
theoretically, yeah, that's what they're saying. So they haven't done that in the past. They've used more of a blanket cost, and so it might be some of the therapies that are done and documented, because like I say, you have to document each therapy, both in your narrative and otherwise. And Medicare will then, like a menu, they'll say, okay, with this therapy, we'll pay, whatever that cost is. So it's going to vary depending on therapy. It's going to vary depending on level of, whether it's a basic level call or an advanced level paramedic call.
Well, this goes back on what I think Rachel was asking about. I mean, if you look, we're looking at $5,000 for an assistant, but I mean, if we
and that's actually just to pay different people to fill in.
I understand that, and I'm wondering whether or not that's lowballing it, because
it is lowballing it.
Yep. So, and I think where Rachel was going was that if you're paying somebody $20,000, let's say, just for the sake of discussion, and they're spending a lot of time itemizing, the costs for Medicare visits.
That's right. Yep.
And we're now getting a higher reimbursement rate from Medicare. That's all built into that $20,000 and reduces the net cost to the town.
And I like that level of thinking. I've had my own business, and I believe that each model, we should look at and what the business model is. So yes, if I could hire somebody that could increase my Medicare, but that's a hard sell, because if you folks ask me, okay, well, how much is it going to increase it? I have no idea. For one, I have to really break it all out, and then it could be disturbing. I mean, maybe they're overpaying me. I don't think that's the case, but there's always that possibility. So I wish I could say to you, yeah, if we fund this person, if we fully fund this position at $20,000, we're going to see a significant increase. I would hope for that. I believe that will be the case. But I can't guarantee you that.
Right.
If that makes sense.
Yeah. We're not here for guarantees.
I know oftentimes, I know that people like solid numbers. What's your revenue? What's your expenditures? And that's a tough one, because you're trying to put more money into organization, which ideally is going to give you additional revenue on the other side of it, but it's not going to be that day. It'll be 6 months, a year.
Right.
So I'm all in favor. If you want to fully fund it, I'd be absolutely behind that initiative, and I will work my best to make that pay a dividend. I believe in that model.
Okay. Any other questions, folks, comments?
No.
Chief, I don't want to raise your blood pressure, but I have to ask.
That's fine.
The $25,000 that you're requesting to be returned, if you will, to the EMT wages. If that does not happen, what would be the impact on your operation?
The problem that we may run into this year is I cut that money out because there's no other place to cut money out. But honestly, I cut it out on a wing and a prayer. In some years, I've had overages in that line item, which I've used to shore up shortfalls in expense accounts. To cut that money, will I have that overage this year? I have no idea. There's a very good chance, especially after the money that I've spent for some of the repair costs that I've had. I could be coming to you at the end of this year and saying, I don't have enough money in my wage accounts to continue service. And honestly, I don't know what happens in that case. I've always been within my budget. I've always been within my budget. That's a sense of pride for me. I had my own business. I believe in the business model to try and make it all work. But this year, to cut out $25,000, there is a chance that there will be a shortfall at the end of this year. So to not put it in for next year, when I've counted on it in every year previous, I don't know how to, I don't even know if I'm going to be able to cut it out this year. So I certainly don't foresee cutting it out for next year. And then, with minimum wage going up to $15, and, I've got an EMT basic who is, making life and death decisions at minimum wage. I don't know what kind of reckoning there's going to be in the wage department. I mean, at some point, the town as a whole is probably going to have to deal with some of that. And I don't have any good answers for that. I try and take care of my folks as best as I reasonably can with an eye to being within my budget. But those are going to be some challenges that we're all going to have to face.
Is that $15 rate unique to us?
The $15, it's $15.31 if you're an EMT basic. Like I say, I have a matrix depending on your certifications and your levels, and there's some other things that go into it, which I could provide you if you wanted. But it lets me gauge someone's level of knowledge and training and their years of experience, and that defines their pay.
Right.
But the bottom side of it, the low side is actually $10 an hour for someone who comes in, and although they come to trainings and to become a firefighter, they may even go to some of the Hampshire County trainings, which is a minimal training program that works within Hampshire County. They band together and offer training, but they get a 50-cent an hour raise, so they get $10.50, and they can be a relatively that's what most volunteers were for years and years, was just that level of training, which with enough fires you become pretty experienced. The academy, I mean, I did training. I used to be chairman of the Hampshire County training. I've designed training programs. It was a big part of my duty in years past. I believe, and I would like to see our department move, and I've encouraged through pay incentives for folks to get academy level training. The academy has since opened up what they call a call volunteer academy, which is a much larger time commitment. It generally runs over a 6-month period. And if they complete that 6 months worth of training at that node, I don't pay them to be there because we don't have the budget for that. You do a lot of firefighting and EMS work because you enjoy that kind of work. It's not, I think you get paid better in police than you do in fire. So they do it. And if they complete that and get certified to what they call Firefighter 1-2 standard, which is a national standard, then they can earn $15.31.
That's great. Other questions?
No.
Nope.
I've got one for you, John.
Hey, Ed, yes.
The $22,500 increase in EMT licensing and certification. What's driving that?
There is no increase in that. That's always been spent. That's always been funded at $2,500. We don't
Okay,
always
well,
use that.
well, in budget tab 2,
Yeah, right,
in
right there,
budget tab 2, you've got
right here, chief.
25 grand.
See?
Is that just an extra zero?
Yeah, that's got to be just an extra zero. And I apologize.
Okay.
That's my fault. Because yeah, that's a $2,500 line item. And yeah, that hasn't changed. And we don't always use it, but when we don't use it, I've utilized anything that's left in that account for short columns and expense line items.
Right.
So I apologize.
Yeah, no need to do the same thing from time to time.
Yeah, no worries.
But
That's important.
I didn't see in your narrative about it, so I was wondering if it was just an extra zero.
Yeah, wish I could get away with it, but probably can't.
Sounds like you use it for something else anyways.
Absolutely, we could use it for something else.
Right.
But I'd rather justify it openly than try and sneak one through.
Right.
I've got enough challenges.
Okay.
So that adjusts
Thanks,
the
Jen.
bottom. So if I just quickly did this, that adjusts that bottom line to 690, 873.30. Am I right? I took 22.5 out of there.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
What was
good
it?
for you.
What was it again? 6?
I just took it off my calculator. It was 690.
98, 70, 30.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. Sorry, I had to put on my glasses, but yeah, that's my mistake. I added a zero there.
Well, I'd rather it be that direction than the other way.
Yeah.
That's right.
$98.73.30. Okay. Okay. Anything else?
I'm good if you are, and you're certainly welcome to ask any questions later if you think of them. More than happy to provide information. You guys are my allies to try and do the best for the department here.
Yes, sir. All right. Then I guess we're set for now, Chief.
Okay.
Thanks for your time. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you, folks.
Thank you, chief.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, man. Have a good
Take care.
night.
All right.
Take care
Thank you,
now.
gang.
Stay
Take
safe.
care.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye now.
Bye-bye.
Did we lose Barbara again? Or did I just?
She indicated she was going to have to leave.
Okay.
She had another meeting she had to go to. So,
Okay.
but we are still quorumed. So we're all set.
Yes, you are.
Comments, thoughts?
I have a question for Ed.
Yeah.
Chief Workman had mentioned several times actually using personal funds in order to cover
Amen.
town expenses.
Yep.
I mean, is that an acceptable process? There's not another process where someone would actually go to the town, the treasurer, et cetera, to say, cut me a check? Or is there no one with a credit card to pay?
And he's got a personal credit card too that he's pledged.
So,
Yeah.
for our business.
Right.
Well, I'll tell you from my experience, there are credit cards here that if I was here when they wanted to get them, they wouldn't have them because they're a nightmare and they cause problems. However, I will say this is yes, the town has a debit card. What to do is come over. They fill out basically a debit card request. They tell you what account that they are going to pay it out of, what the amount is. They give you an invoice or a quote for that, and basically the accountant goes to the accountant. The accountant signs off on the funds are there and can be transferred. It then goes down to the treasurer and basically transfers the funds, puts them on the debit card, and the department head can use that debit card.
Does the chief know that there's a process in place so he doesn't have to use his personal funds?
Yes, he does.
He does. So it's his choice to use his personal funds?
He does. They all know that there are a good amount of them that just don't want to go through the process sometimes.
But there's a liability both ways. For him using a credit card for town business and the town depending upon his credit. That's a danger. Right?
Like I say, there's a process in place that they don't have to use their own credit cards.
Okay, well, I guess somebody's going to talk to him about that, I guess.
It sounded more like he wanted to stay within his budget, and it meant it was more towards him staying in his budget as opposed to just having the need to use his credit card. That's how it came across to me.
Well,
not that makes it any more. It's still a liability. Yes.
Right.
Can I ask, Ed, do you see the details on the departmental expense lines? Because all we get is a roll-up. And so much of the questions in the conversation was around accessing some of that information from him tonight. Do you see it so that before it becomes like a sum total that we see? Or could we get that information?
I thought I sent his narrative along with the Excel.
You did, but I'd like to see line item. I'd just like to see numbers and numbers, and not. I have to bounce back and forth between what he said or start to make up my own sheet to fill in the blanks. I'm just looking for the detail. I'm not just on.
I don't follow you then.
Not just on his, but on all of them. I mean, it's just one big number.
It's like being able to drill down into what the background is to that line item.
Right.
You don't know what it's comprised of. It's just a line.
That's what I was asking, to find out what his must-pays or his fixed costs were with regards to routine maintenance, what the fuel costs are, any reoccurring service contracts, maintenance contracts. He said utilities are paid by the town, but not sure, is that a lease trailer? Is that a purchase trailer? But I didn't want to.
That's a purchase trailer.
Purchase trailer. It's that he lacked those specifics. That I'm the type of person that I want those details. So when I'm looking at the 26,000, I know that's not free discretionary dollars. 20,000, 22,000 is already spoken for right out of the gate. But that wasn't available.
Yeah, I guess.
Right.
I'm trying to think of who asked. I think it was Ken who asked the question. In prior years, that 26.1 in fire department expenses would have covered the fire truck maintenance. Now we're adding $10,000, and then we haven't backed in order to track it, but we didn't back it out of the 26.
Exactly. That's where it was. Yeah, so I think it's double counted.
It hasn't been backed out yet. It won't get backed out until the end of the fiscal year.
No, but in his
we
budget.
can only do transfers in May and June.
No. It's not it. They're talking about his fiscal year, his budget 2.
Right. His budget number
26.1 for the fire truck, for the department expenses, and then another 10.
Right. But
10,281 for.
And if you take a look at the spreadsheet, Francine, for 2019, you're going to see regular fire department expenses of 26,000.
Right.
Change. Then underneath, you're going to see maintenance, fire truck maintenance of 3,000, et cetera. So his budget wasn't just limited to the 26,000. He got additional funds to cover the fire truck maintenance. It's a big ticket item.
Yeah, I guess because I didn't see it in the prior 2 years.
Right.
20 and 21.
Yeah.
I just assumed it was an add-on, but you're right.
For 20, actually, for 20.
No, he would have had to transfer monies into there at the end of the fiscal year to cover it.
Okay.
For the end of year draft 2020, Regina had sent us, it showed like $704 for fire truck maintenance. And for the 21, you know, the last expense report we got for the end of January, there's $4,300 for fire truck maintenance. So I know he said he spent $10,000 already. I guess his expenses hasn't caught up to the expense, but that's what's on the books right now. But if you look at the previous years,
right,
19, he wasn't just limited to that 26. He got additional funds, and the fire truck was a separate line item, but he got additional dollars to cover that. It wasn't just coming out of his expenses.
Okay, the 26 one.
What I wanted to get from is 26,000. What are the fixed costs? So is it 18, 20 coming right off the top, and that only gives them a little bit of wiggle room or discretionary dollars?
Gotcha.
Well, excuse me. I personally think that his biggest issue, is this administrative aid. No question. And I don't think $5,000 is going to do. I mean, if you factor that in at $15 an hour, if it were that, because that's what he's paying to one of his 45 members to do it.
That's
only
member.
That's like 300 hours.
And his actual first draft, the budget too for that one actually had $10,000 in it, and then he was looking at it and thought that he'd make an intermediate step to try to get it started and cut the 10 to 5.
Ed, can I ask a question here? Now, under the CARES Act, he had written in an administrative aid, and I think that was approved, but he's not hired one. Is that right?
Correct. And I'm gonna say this: under the CARES Act funding, the only thing that administrative aid would have been able to do is clerical work associated with COVID. Correct. And once I explained that to him, I think he backed off, because I'm the one that's got to send in the reports on this stuff and explain it. So, it doesn't just put an administrative assistant in that seat and pay them to do, regular payroll, regular invoices, what have you.
Gotcha.
I mean, they've been kind of offered compromises in the past. The police chief also does not have an administrative assistant, and they've been offered compromises of, okay, well, how about a shared administrative assistant that totals 18 hours, or whatever, or 15 hours, and they always find some excuse that that won't work for them, such as the fact that both of their payrolls are due on Mondays at 10 a.m., so that would conflict and what have you. I know basically bigger police departments or fire departments that basically on their own are larger than what our fire police are combined, that basically have an administrative assistant that can do that amount of work and payroll.
Well,
yeah, and the other thing I kind of go to, and this is, and I told it to the select board the other night, and they're right. They've gotten on me for some of the things that I do that are way under my pay grade. So to me, an administrative assistant is an administrative assistant, and while either chief might sit there and tell us, well, and if I use a police officer, it's obviously a bad example, but okay, he says, well, somebody at $15 an hour, starting, at starting wage, well, there's no guarantee that that's who'll end up doing it. And if you end up having a, firefighter EMT in that seat making $23, $24, $25 an hour, well, guess what? That's out of really out of and above what an administrative assistant, at least in our current pay scale, would receive.
And would a admin pool ever work at the town? I know us, when we were having a shortage of administrative personnel, what we did is we consolidated all the administrative personnel into a work pool. And all the offices basically went to the lead person with their work requirements, and it was divvied up amongst the professionals. Would that work for the town, to have everybody centrally located and everyone would be able to go to them with their administrative requirements and divvy out the work that way? Or is it because varying schedules?
When we work on our informational system network, I would say yes. It's obviously a cultural change because everyone wants someone working for, them. But I have done that in one other community where instead of having small hours for basically 3 different committees, boards, departments, whatever, basically combined it and got one person to do that, and basically told those boards and committees what hours, the number of hours they actually had for any particular work to utilize that individual. But yeah, I think that's, and it's somewhat tough because, even here in town hall, we're limited as to, space of where you're going to put someone or what have you. But yeah, theoretically, that would definitely work. I've also seen communities do things like, whether it's a shared person or a not shared person, have someone located by basically in non-COVID times by the front of the building or whatever. And, the individual or individuals would come in and basically, say what they were looking to have help with or whatever. And that person would, basically either take them around or, if they had the ability to help them themselves to get everything done and lined up for them. So, yeah, it's a good idea. I would love to have a little bit more space in this building because I think, some of the other things I think about with shared pooling is basically, I think that our possibility of having a shared admin assistant maybe between, I would call it inspectional services between our building department and our Board of Health, could we do a shared administrative assistant between like the planning board and the ZBA and maybe another board? I think those are all strong possibilities. There's a cultural breakdown. There's a fiefdom breakdown in there as a change. And like I say, some of it, we'd have to definitely update our technology.
Yeah, but it sounds as though at this point he's got almost a full-time requirement for a certain period of time. I'm not saying he's going to a permanent full-time person, yeah. but he's going to need somebody in there 8 hours a day for 5 days a week for who knows, 4 months, 5 months, 3 months, whatever.
I would probably, rather than do that, just say, okay, he needs someone in there, whether it's 12, 15 hours a week or, whatever, 10, 12, 15 hours a week, and put him in there and let him go to town.
Yeah, I would agree. Because, Rachel, your point about, it's going to get... There's going to be revenue on the other side or expense savings or what have you. It sounds like he's doing all this stuff himself.
He is. In one way or another.
No, he's got his staff doing a lot for him. But that being said, I will say, yeah, as the only full-time person there, John, like many other of our department heads, is pulled in 6 different directions at once.
Yep.
Now, I thought I understood it. If they're not on a call, and who has to be there all the time? Not firefighters, they're on call, but the paramedics and the EMTs, does he have them there on 8-hour shifts?
Most of the firefighters are also EMTs or paramedics. So, I mean, basically what he really tries to do is have a paramedic firefighter and an EMT basic firefighter together on a shift.
Okay, so if they're on the shift and they're there and they're not on a call, then they're doing some of this work. Is that how it's working?
Yeah, basically.
Okay.
And then theoretically, what happens is if you get and then in addition to that, John's either there or out doing inspections or whatever. And theoretically, if you had like another call come in, which is like a fire call or whatever, then they would send out the call for other people to come in and man that. Or if our ambulance is out in service and another ambulance call comes in, it would probably go to, either Easthampton might service it or Westfield might service it if that need came up.
Well, it sounds like this is a to be continued. I mean, I don't know that we're.
Well, it's something. Yeah, it's to keep in the back of the minds, whether it's finance committee or select board, of these additional requests, and then when it comes down to see actually how everything lines up, that's the hard part, because then you say, theoretically saying, oh, okay, if we funded everything in everybody's budget one, there's either no money left over or there's $50,000 left over. Are there pieces in tab 2 of the various departments that we think strongly that should be funded and added into that budget?
Right, but
and Ken, you heard a little bit of it from me this afternoon. COVID has a little bit to the town, but I look at this as being at a crossroads. Either the town is actually trying to provide services over and above what we can afford, and we have to cut back on those services, or if the townspeople really want those services, then, and I'm not saying this particular year because it's a poor year to do it, really the town should say, okay, here's the services we think that the townspeople really want. Here's what they actually cost to fully fund them, and then take that out and ask for a Proposition 2.5 override.
Well,
can you present 2 proposals at a town meeting and have the town?
what was that again?
Can 2 budget scenarios be proposed at the town meeting for the town members to decide which one they want to do, or do we get only one that we have to present?
Because you want to make sure that if you're going for an override, you want to make sure that if that override doesn't pass, you've got a budget in place rather than coming back. In 2018, that's basically how it was done. There was a budget A and a budget B, and then basically the article was written of asking for the override, listing in it what it would actually supply as or provide as benefits to the townspeople for services. And then, basically if they approved that article for the budget override, it would revert to, you basically move forward with that. But if they didn't vote for it, it would revert back to basically the budget A.
But that year was a good year, and they approved budget B, the override.
Yes, correct. And then it's two pieces. It's a town meeting vote number 1, and then it's a annual election ballot vote also.
I guess the only comment I have is on, it's just been a bit eye-opening for me listening to these past 2 meetings. It seems like as a town, we're so decentralized. And I feel like if we had more centralized services, for instance, the admin assistant doing administration, the payroll, things like that, in one centralized location, it just seems like there'd be so many areas to attempt some cost savings so that we could do more of the secondary budgets for people as opposed. And I know it's a cultural thing, but perhaps we just need to look at that cultural aspect of it to see how willing people would be to make those changes. And maybe I'm not seeing it correctly, but it just looks like there's a lot of repetitive pieces going on in each area that we could handle in one localized area. I don't know.
Rachel, I tend to think the way you think, and one big thing comes to my mind is purchasing. Everybody does all their own thing. It's not centralized. It may be different now with Ed, but I remember when every department used a different IT company to support the equipment in their offices rather than having one contract, that may be discounted because of the volume of work that they would have gotten if they had the whole town. Now, those things may have changed, but I think that's worth looking into.
Definitely. I used to work for a real estate investment company, and we had one centralized location. They had, over, I think it was 25,000 place units all over the United States and abroad. And we had one centralized hub for accounts payable, for accounts receivable, for payroll, and the economies of scale for savings and salaries was hugely, it was such a huge savings just to do that. And it is difficult to get there, but once you get there, you reap the rewards. And
you're correct.
Yeah.
Right. But I guess I question where that falls. Finance committee responsibilities, for us are what's on the, what are on the tally sheets and what judging, from what is on the tally sheets to what's being proposed for, a future year is one thing, but, finance committee is not going to get involved in personnel.
True. No, I'm not saying that we need to be involved.
I understand.
It's just a perception I'm having of or what I'm seeing.
It makes perfect sense. The problem then, but then the problem comes if we come back to this and you say, I'll use that 20,000 figure again, and you come back and say, well, here's the problem. How do you justify that to a town meeting? Whose burden is that to justify? Here's here's why it's $20,000 higher. Is that the chief's? Is it ours? Is it yours, Ed? I mean,
It actually becomes all of the above.
Yeah, well.
Yeah, I mean, and when basically when things work well, everyone's in agreement, whether it happens to be the department head, the finance committee, the town administrator, the select board, or what have you. It's where you start getting, the divisions in there of which way we're going, or what the priorities are, or whatever, that things tend to fall apart and not move forward.
Right. Well, I guess the other concern that came out of this sit down with the chief was, well, I don't have that level of detail. I'll have to come back to you. That hasn't been the case with the other departments we've dealt with. And I think, to me, that's an indication that he doesn't have that available to him. And I don't know how much digging he's going to have to do or where he's going to go, but
he'll come back to either Regina or myself, and we can run the reports to help him out with that. But you've got a couple of things going on. Is over the 3 years I've been here, each year I've tried to move the departments into giving more levels of detail along with their budget requests and their narratives, and gradually, and some have been better than others, we've been basically getting there.
Yeah.
So, but it's like I say, yeah, they don't have their own ability to run their reports out of our financial software system, unfortunately, but we can provide them with the different levels of detail that, whether it's by account number of, what vendors they basically paid and spent during, fiscal year, the entire fiscal year 20, or how much they paid to a particular vendor. There's a number of different ways to do it.
Okay. All right. Well, where do we go with the fire department? Does anybody want to bring him in again, talk to him further, once we've established what our concerns are from the standpoint of we need more detail? Or are we happy to vote on the budget submission the way it is?
To vote, Chief. This is just fact finding right now.
What's that?
We're not voting on individual budgets. We're just doing fact finding.
Right. But I guess that's my
question. But if you wanted more,
have you found enough?
Yeah, but if you want detail
as of tonight
to base that future decision on, then you should put your questions together, and if you want, send them to me, and I'll send them along to John, and we'll get them back to you. Or you can ask those questions and say, yeah, we'd like to see you again face to face and have you answer these questions.
Right.
I personally feel like asking questions at this point is moot until we see what we have for a full budget. I mean, it may not even be a question. We may not even merit questions if we're so under that we have to get to a level of funding.
Yeah.
And we can't even entertain anything additionally.
Right. And then at that point, we just say, well, we've got problems where we can't do anything about them.
Right.
All right. So we put him on a back burner and continue with our review process with the remaining departments.
Yes, I think so.
Do we want to give him a heads up that we may be coming back to him for more detail? Ned?
Yeah, I will do that. That way, at least he can prepare.
Okay. All right, then we need to complete our schedule here. We've got those lined up for March 1st.
Now, what order would you like them in, so I can let them know basically what times they should sign in?
Yeah, I would say that probably Highway Department should probably go last.
Okay, yeah.
And then you got town clerk and the treasurer, so I would say town clerk would probably be the smoother of the two. Unless I'm wrong.
They'll probably both be fairly smooth.
Okay.
But I'll let Lucy know she should plan on the 5:30 slot. I'll let Jen know she should plan on the 6 o'clock slot, and I will estimate that Randall will come up for the highway department around 6:30.
And then will you also let Jen know we still need the narratives for her expenses?
Sure.
Have we, I have the one from Lucy, but I haven't received, at least I don't see anything from the highway department.
I haven't sent that out yet. I was waiting to have all three together.
Okay, perfect.
I'll
Thank
send
you.
it out within the next
Okay.
few days. I was looking for the-
I'll have to look. I thought Randall had sent me a narrative. I'll have to check.
Randall is all set. Highway's all set. It's just Jennifer, her area. We don't have the narrative on her.
Okay.
And the town clerk, Lucy, sent her information today. The revised data today.
Okay. Great.
Okay, and so who does that leave us for March 3?
Scheduled anybody. No one else is ready. We don't have anybody else.
Right, no, I'm just looking at who's on the chart here, but needs to be.
Well, the Board of Health is supposed to meet tomorrow and vote on a revised budget. So hopefully they will send that to me on Thursday. So they might be a good one for possibly Monday night.
The building inspector?
I've got to help Ron with his budget, but let me talk to him tomorrow and see if the two of us can put that back together. So you've got it and you've got a narrative on it.
Okay.
And then, Ed, if you can send us the breakdown, the narrative for your expenses, for all your stuff.
That's always the hard part with me, of actually sitting down and writing it out. So I will do my best.
You're not following your own budget call?
Right now, I'm doing about 6 different jobs. So just trying to stay sane has been a challenge. So I've been thinking about that. I go, yeah, I'm setting a fine example here.
You're the standard bearer.
You got
that.
I know it.
So we don't have anyone that's ready for the 3rd yet.
Okay.
And the water is going to be late, right? Because they still need state figures?
Well, basically the Water Enterprise Fund and the transfer station need some figures from the state and from basically me, which will take me a while to put together because I have not done that level of detail here before. So.
Okay.
But I would think you can at least get the Board of Health for Wednesday the 3rd. I'll work with Ron and hopefully with that one to you for the 3rd. And I can be the last guinea pig.
For the 3rd. Okay. We'll lock you up right now.
So only if we get everything,
Okay.
because I'm not going to be going through the data that morning. Please.
Okay.
Gotcha.
You're doing a great job, Mary, of keeping it organized.
My hair's falling out.
So's mine.
Yeah. It was like today when I sent along the change from the Council on Aging to you. I can't wait till Mary makes a comment about this email coming through.
Daggers. I'll be showing daggers.
But on the flip side, I'm going, okay, but they caught on to particularly your comment the other night about another department really not following the directions. So I goes, they're trying to comply. I can't argue with that.
I know, it's my fault.
All right. Then we're set up for 1 March. We're set up for 3 March.
For 3 March, do we want to look at the lineup so I can go online and schedule the meetings? Which ones do you want to do first?
Ed, what's your recommendation? Building inspector, Board of Health, and you. You want Board of? Well, you said you were going to do the last. So which of the Board of Health and Building inspector goes first?
I mean, I'm here anyway, so I'd probably say Board of Health, Building inspector, and Town administrator.
Okay.
Okay, I'm going to do I'll set up the.
And then for the first, you've got it in order of town clerk, treasurer collector, and then highway.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. I think we're done.
And Ed promises to send me the data, right? You'll send me my stuff. You'll send me all my stuff, right? Otherwise,
I'll send you all kinds of stuff.
I'm gonna come visit you, and you won't like it.
Mary, all you got to do is look up in the corner.
Now you're a tough taskmaster.
All you got to do is look up in the corner. There's a little red light flashing. It says recording.
Oh no.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
No, a public threat. Oh no.
So you got him. You got him.
Okay.
All right, folks, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move.
Moved. Second.
Second.
Unanimous. Thank you all. Have a good night for what's left.
Thank you, everybody.
Good night,
Have a good night.
Good night, everyone.
See you on the 1st.
Bye.
Take care.
Bye.
All right.
My stuff, Ed.